The honourable member for Edmonton Centre.
Oh, thank you, Madam Speaker. It is indeed an absolute pleasure to rise this morning to speak to this bill on electoral reform within the province of Alberta, and indeed to honour the request of the member from Chestermere-Rocky View to discuss the issue of residency and the changes that are proposed in this bill. Now, over the weekend, Madam Speaker, there has been much discussion about this, sparked largely by some unfortunate misinformation on the part of the United Conservative Party of Alberta, and of course their leader, Mr. Kenny, Honourable Mr. Kenny, noting that claims that we were removing the requirement for residency in the province of Alberta.
You don't say.
Now, there were some interesting suggestions from members across the aisle, including the member for Cypress Medicine Hat and some others, indeed the member for Calgary Fish Creek, suggesting that perhaps these changes were in order to bus in large amounts of supporters from outside the province. An absolutely ludicrous proposal, Madam Speaker. Reminds me of some of the ridiculous claims we've heard from south of the border about phantom suggestions of mass voter fraud, which all seem to come from the same side of the political spectrum.
You know fraud's still illegal, right?
Now, Madam Speaker, to be clear, the rules within the province of Alberta, as noted, I should note, by the mainstream press, indeed, CBC Edmonton yesterday posted a very clear explanation of how these changes work. Perhaps the member has not had the opportunity to read that article yet. I would suggest that she perhaps would like to take a look. But it makes it quite clear that what is happening in this legislation is, as was requested on more than one occasion by the Chief Electoral Officer of the province. And I will say, Madam Speaker, that as the chair of the Standing Committee on Legislative Offices, I have deep respect for the expertise that is in fact offered by those legislative officers. And indeed, I will note, Madam Speaker, that the CEO, in fact, himself noted that he was consulted on several occasions about specific pieces that were brought forward in this legislation. Yep. And on this particular note, which is in response to his request, based on a legal case, which found that it would be against the Charter of Rights and Freedoms to deny somebody the opportunity to vote, we are proposing to remove the requirement that somebody be ordinarily resident. And again, Madam Speaker, that is a specific definition that is provided on the Elections Alberta website, which again the members can read if they wish to educate themselves on this issue. And a term that is used in other areas, for example, in determining whether someone is eligible for the Alberta Healthcare Insurance Plan. They also have to demonstrate that they are ordinarily resident within the province of Alberta. So as long as that is the case, we are simply removing the fact that that has to be the case for 6 months, something which the Chief Electoral Officer has clearly stated was difficult and at times impossible to prove. So the members opposite are very fond of saying we need to cut red tape and needless regulation. The CEO himself identified that this was a requirement that often could not actually be proven. So he recommended that we make this change and reduce it to the one item which is simple and basic to prove: is the individual who is wishing to vote ordinarily a resident of the province of Alberta?
So not students from out of province?
That is done, Madam Speaker, by that individual providing photo identification with their address, or providing other identification as required under the Act and clearly noted and explained on the Elections Alberta website, or in a particular case, if an individual does not have said ID, and in fact this is the case for some folks in my constituency who are homeless, may not have access to identification or other things, an individual who knows that individual who themselves produces the ID that is required, which shows who they are and that they are ordinarily resident in that particular electoral district, can vouch for one and only one other individual sign a legal declaration stating that they are vouching for this individual. That individual then makes a legal declaration that they are, in fact, ordinarily resident in that area, and then that person is allowed to vote. If this, Madam Speaker, is a mass conspiracy for voter fraud, it's a hell of an inefficient one. I apologize for my use of that word. I retract that word. Oh. Yeah, you know what? The member for Chestermere Rocky observed that I'm angry. And indeed, Madam Speaker, I am angry. Because this abuse of the facts, this incredible, as was noted by Mr. Thompson, Graham Thompson of the Edmonton Journal in his editorial yesterday, this constant extreme massaging of the facts by the members opposite and by their leader. And in fact, this has increased exponentially since they acquired this new. Of course, that does make me angry, Madam Speaker. Albertans deserve better.
Agreed.
Albertans deserve representatives that are able to discuss these issues based on facts. And the kind of fear-mongering we're hearing from the UCP anger machine does a disservice to the people of Alberta.
Agreed.
So thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm happy to have this opportunity to put the facts in.
Hear, hear.
Here, here.